I want to tell you about a patient I'll call Margaret. She was 53 years old, a teacher from the Midwest. For 4 years, she had been bloated for day. Not occasionally, not after a heavy meal, but every single day. She had cut out gluten, she had cut out dairy, she had tried 3 different probiotics, she had eliminated alcohol, eating what most people would consider a genuinely clean diet. And she was still bloated every single day. Came to see me, she expected me to hand her another elimination protocol, another list of foods to avoid. What I told her surprised her. I said, Margaret, I don't think your problem is what you're eating. I think your problem is what your body can't get rid of. That distinction is what this entire video is about. The way your digestive system communicates with and is affected by nearly every other system in your body. And here's something that took me years to fully appreciate. The gut is not just a digestive organ. It is the body's primary excretion system for a class of chemicals that your liver and kidneys cannot process efficiently. Most people have never heard this, and the reason that matters is because when that excretion system gets overwhelmed, bloating is often the first visible signal that something deeper is wrong. What we know is that the gut has a specific, elegant mechanism for capturing and removing certain toxins through the stool. When that mechanism is impaired, PEV, or simply not being supported, PEV, those toxins don't leave. They recirculate, they accumulate, and they compromise how the intestinal wall functions. That's the real mechanism at play here. And it's one that most videos on bloating never get close to explaining. Let me introduce you to the antagonist in this story. It's called PFAS, per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. You may have heard them called forever chemicals. That name isn't metaphorical. It's mechanistically accurate. Unlike BPA, which your body can excrete in a matter of hours, PFAS have a biological half-life of 2 to 5 years. That means a PFAS molecule you were exposed to in 2022 may still be sitting in your body right now. Here's what makes this so important for anyone watching this video. Recent studies have found PFAS contamination on conventionally grown produce. Strawberries, leafy greens, fruits that most people eat specifically because they're trying to be healthy. 2023 an analysis published in Environmental Science and Technology found detectable PFAS levels on multiple types of conventionally grown fruits and vegetables. So the problem isn't exotic. It isn't theoretical. It is sitting in your shopping cart. And the downstream effects go far beyond what most people would expect from a digestive problem. Seeing evidence that chronic PFAS accumulation is associated with disrupted immune regulation, altered hormonal signaling, reduced bone density in children, and, critically for the purpose of this video, impaired gut barrier function. And that's not a minor finding. Now, this one deserves its own section because it changes how you think about bloating entirely. PFAS are not excreted through urine the way most environmental toxins are. The kidney is simply not the right exit for this class of molecule. Here is how that works. Your liver produces bile acids, which are released into the small intestine to help digest fats. After doing their job, most of those bile acids are reabsorbed and recycled. This is called enterohepatic circulation. Critical is that PFAS molecules PAR and other fat-soluble toxins bind to these bile acids during their transit through the gut. Substance in the intestine can intercept those bile acids before reabsorption and carry them out through the stool. It pulls the PFAS with them. That is the mechanism, that is the exit door. And for that exit door to work, you need a specific type of fiber in your intestine to do the binding. People are not getting it, which is why, for many patients like Margaret, the toxins just keep recirculating. The intestinal wall, chronically exposed, loses some of its structural integrity. Tight junctions weaken. Permeability increases, and bloating becomes the daily background noise of a gut that is simply overloaded. In 2055, a randomized controlled trial was published that I found genuinely exciting, and I don't use that word lightly when describing clinical research. It used a specific type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan. 72 men with elevated cholesterol were randomized to receive either 3 grams of beta-glucan per day, divided into 1 gram, 3 times daily cartgen, or a placebo control of rice powder. The trial ran for 4 weeks. The primary endpoint was LDL cholesterol. And Yeste, the beta-glucan group, reduced their LDL by approximately 6%, which corresponds to roughly an 8% reduction in cardiovascular risk. That alone would make this a significant result. The finding that caught my attention was not the primary endpoint. The researchers also measured PFAS levels in both groups. For just 4 weeks, the beta-glucan group showed an 8% reduction in 2 different types of PFAS compounds. Whoa, a statistically significant result. Now, I want to be precise here because this matters. The study was not primarily powered to detect PFAS excretion. The sample size was designed around the cholesterol endpoint. The PFAS result is what researchers would call a secondary finding, or more accurately, a pilot signal. It needs to be replicated in a larger trial specifically designed to measure it. But the mechanism behind the finding is sound, and the direction of the evidence is clear. Glucan fiber in the gut intercepts bile acids before they are reabsorbed, and it pulls toxins out with them through the stool. Evidence says that something simple, inexpensive, and well tolerated can support both of those systems at once. That is not a common finding in clinical nutrition research. Bring this back to what I see clinically to woe, and to why this matters for the bloating that so many of my patients have tried everything to fix. Circulate through the enterohepatic system. They re-enter the bloodstream, and over time, they create a low-grade inflammatory environment in the intestinal wall. Inflammation affects the tight junctions, GIO, the microscopic protein structures that hold the cells of your intestinal lining together. Junctions loosen, the gut becomes selectively permeable in ways it shouldn't be. This is what clinicians mean when they refer to increased intestinal permeability. One of its most consistent symptoms in patient after patient is persistent, unexplained bloating. Bloating after a specific food, not bloating tied to a clear trigger, just chronic background bloating that doesn't respond to elimination diets. Because the source isn't the food you're eating, it's the accumulated chemical load that your gut is struggling to clear. In this useful and I hope you are too, I'd encourage you to subscribe. I make videos specifically about the gut mechanisms that most people never hear explain this clearly. And there's a lot more to come. Talk about beta-glucan specifically, because understanding why it works is what separates a useful protocol from just another supplement recommendation. Glucan is a fermentable soluble fiber. It can be derived from oats or from barley. Both are effective, and I'll come back to an important distinction between the two in a moment. When beta-glucan enters the small intestine, it forms a viscous gel. That gel slows transit, which extends the contact time between the fiber and the bile acids in that environment. Mechanistically important. The longer the contact time, the more bile acids the fiber can bind before they reach the reabsorption site in the terminal ileum. And because PFAS molecules are attached to those bile acids, more binding means more excretion. It then has to synthesize new bile acids to replace the ones lost, and it does this by pulling LDL cholesterol from the bloodstream. Why the LDL reduction and the PFAS reduction happen through the same pathway. One intervention, 2 outcomes. Same mechanism. And the dosing that has been validated in randomized controlled trials is specific. 3 grams per day divided into 1 gram taken 3 times. 2 grams, not 10 grams. 3 grams, time to maintain a continuous presence of the fiber in the gut throughout the day. That's the part that most videos seem to skip over. The timing matters because the bile acid cycle is continuous. If you take all 3 grams at once, you're only supporting 1 cycle. Spreading the dose supports 3. And this brings me to a point that I think is really underappreciated when people start researching beta-glucan supplementation. Instinct is to go straight to oat-based beta-glucan. Oats are familiar, they're perceived as clean and natural, but here is the problem. Oats are one of the crops most heavily sprayed with glyphosate in conventional agriculture. Supplementing with beta-glucan specifically to reduce your body's chemical load, choosing a conventionally processed oat source that carries its own contamination risk is counterproductive. The available oat-derived beta-glucan products, most are not certified organic, most do not carry independent third-party testing for glyphosate residue or heavy metals. Barley is a different picture. Barley beta-glucan has been used in multiple clinical trials with strong results. And there are certified organic, non-GMO, glyphosate-free barley beta-glucan sources with third-party verification for heavy metals. That level of verification is what you should be looking for regardless of brand. Recommending any specific product here, what I'm recommending is a standard: organic source, glyphosate-free certification, independent third-party testing. Product doesn't meet those three criteria, the intervention you're trying to support is undermined by the product itself. Here's how I would actually approach this if I were starting from zero. 3 grams of beta-glucan per day from a verified barley source. 1 gram with breakfast, 1 gram at lunch, 1 gram with dinner. Goal is continuous coverage of the bile acid cycles throughout the day, not a single large dose. Give it a minimum of 4 weeks before you assess. The 2025 trial saw statistically significant PFAS reduction in 4 weeks. Barrier improvement takes longer, typically 8 to 12 weeks of consistent support before symptomatic change becomes reliable. Don't abandon the protocol at week 2 because the bloating hasn't resolved. Pair it with adequate hydration. Soluble fiber forms a gel in the gut pal, and that gel needs water to move efficiently. Add beta-glucan without increasing fluid intake, you can temporarily worsen the very symptoms you're trying to resolve. Aim for an additional 400 to 600 milliliters of water per day above your baseline. Fourth, don't remove it from the context of overall gut health. Beta-glucan is a powerful tool for the excretion pathway. It works best when the intestinal environment is also being supported through adequate sleep, through reduced ultra-processed food intake, through minimizing ongoing PFAS exposure where possible. Choosing organic produce for the highest risk fruits, strawberries, spinach, apples, pears, the input load, while the beta-glucan increases the output rate. That's the complete framework. Input reduction plus excretion support. And that combination is what Margaret needed. TEA, not another elimination diet. I'll come back to Margaret for a moment, because her case illustrates something that I think is genuinely important. Anyone who has been through the frustration of chronic bloating that doesn't respond to the standard advice. 8 weeks on a structured beta-glucan protocol. 3 grams per day, timed across 3 meals, barley-based and third-party tested trial. Her daily bloating had reduced significantly. Not completely resolved, because gut repair takes time. But the constant, low-grade distension that had been her baseline for 4 years had shifted. What changed wasn't her diet. Her diet was already clean. What changed was her gut's ability to do what it was always designed to do. The accumulated load that was quietly compromising its function from the inside. I've seen this pattern enough times now that it has changed how I approach chronic gut symptoms in clinical practice. The first question I used to ask was, what are you eating? The first question I ask now is, what is your body unable to get rid of? Gut is not just a digestive organ. It is the body's most important excretion system for a class of chemicals the rest of your detoxification pathways cannot handle efficiently. When that system is unsupported DAO, binding capacity inside the intestine is insufficient pound, those chemicals stay. They recirculate, they accumulate, and the gut tells you, in the most persistent, frustrating way it knows, something is wrong. The news is that the mechanism is understood. The intervention is specific. The evidence is real, and it is growing. Grams of beta-glucan per day from a clean, verified source, timed across 3 meals, supported with adequate hydration. 4 weeks minimum, 8 to 12 for full symptomatic benefit. That is a protocol you can start this week. If you found this video useful, please share it with someone who has been struggling with chronic bloating. If you want to go deeper on gut barrier function, intestinal permeability, and the specific mechanisms that drive long-term digestive health, subscribe. That's exactly what this channel is built around. I'll see you in the next one.